All right, good afternoon, everybody. How are y'all? Good, 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 good. All right, I'm not a very formal guy. I need to turn this down some, and also I'm very southern, so if y'all have any trouble understanding me, and don't hesitate to ask me to repeat myself. I probably won't get in much of a hurry either, but my name is Brett Harvey. I'm the supervisory special agent that's currently over the Joint Terrorism Task Force here in Memphis. Just a little bit about myself. Before I took over the task force, uh, I've been in the Bureau for about 13 years. Initially started working counterintelligence matters and then transitioned over to the JTTF when I was in Corpus Christi, Texas, and then I was in Jonesboro, Arkansas for a while. And then I became the WMD coordinator, which means I was responsible for anything that's chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, or explosive. And I'm also Special Agent Bomb Tech with the FBI. Also crisis negotiator. So I've wore a lot of hats, and I was the division's active shooter coordinator before I went on to the JTF to take it over. So they've asked me to come talk to you guys about active shooters. We're going to go through the CRAZE presentation today. It's the civilian response course. If you guys have any questions, stop me at any time. I'll be more than happy to do whatever I need to do to explain. If you have any questions you don't want to ask while we're going, grab me after. If you guys have any private businesses that you would like us to come out and give these presentations to, like your workers or your companies, please let us know. We do it all the time. Well, let's just kick this off. So what's an active attack event? So the federal definition of an active attack event is actually attempted mass murder. So I don't know if you guys heard yesterday down in Arcabutla, Mississippi, there was a kind of a domestic incident where a guy killed his ex-wife and a bunch of people, 6 people got killed. So that qualifies as an active attack. Well, the night before last, out at Wolf Chase Mall, I don't know if you guys heard, at the food court at Wolf Chase, they had an incident. That would qualify as an active attack event. So basically, it's any time that there's somebody that's going on and either shooting, and we'll get into it a little bit later. It doesn't necessarily have to be an active shooter event because it doesn't necessarily have to be a shooter. It can be a stabbing. It can be someone doing an attack via vehicle, but we'll get into some of that. So everybody always wants to know, what's the attacker? Is there any way to predict who these people are? There's absolutely no way to predict. Statistically, there's no way to look out and say this person's going to do it or that person's going to do it. The best way to predict these things kind of is in your daily activities and your interactions with people. Watch how they change, watch how they do, watch how their lifestyles are changing, if they're pulling away from people. There are some risk factors that kind of give you a little bit of a heads up, like if they have a history of violence, if they're exposed to violence, if they've got a substance abuse, a history of mental illness or some kind of suicide. Those things kind of lend to it, but there's no profile. Some of them have an avenger mindset. They always think they've been hurt by the world, and they want to go out and do these attacks to get justice. A lot of them are geared toward employees or employers or other employees that have done them wrong at their work. And sometimes a lot of people, like the Kroger shooting, the guy got mad basically at the manager, came back to get the manager. The people that really got hurt were just collateral damage. I mean, the manager did get shot too, but some broadcast their stuff, some put it out on social media, so you'll kind of see they're having issues or having breaks. Some don't. Some keep it to themselves. So it's kind of hard to tell. There's the risk factors: the history of violence, exposure to violence, substance abuse, mental illness, and history of suicidality. These are just risk factors. You can have people that go through all this and they're absolutely fine. You can have people that don't go through this and they still end up pulling off some kind of active event. Some more risk factors: stalking, harassing, isolation or instability. These are, I would say, isolation and instability. So if you got somebody who was a part of a group or part of the community and all of a sudden you see them pull away from everybody and they're trying to hold off by themselves and their behavior changes like 180 degrees, that's probably a factor that you want to kind of take into consideration. And I always hate, people don't want to report people, but it's always better to report somebody that you think may be thinking about doing something or doing something, because we can pull some threads. And if nothing else, we can try to get them some help. One thing we've started here in West Tennessee is a mental health coalition. So we have partnered up with every mental health partner basically west of the Tennessee River, whether it's a mobile crisis provider, the people that come out to provide assistance when somebody's having an issue at their house. It's the mental hospitals, or I call them aftercare providers, the one that do the mental health care after they get home. So that we put together a team. So that if somebody's in crisis, we can reach out to them, and we may not be able to, because in our world, in the federal system, you can't necessarily do a law enforcement solution because they probably haven't violated any federal crimes. So, but that person still needs help and is crying out in crisis. So that's where we bring in the mental health side to try to get them help. Because if we can help them through mental health or through law enforcement and protect the community at large, that's kind of our job. That's been my big thing, is setting up that thing. So this kind of lets you, whoops. This one's kind of slow. It's gonna work. There it goes. Yeah, this sort of shows you, as time's gone on, how it's kind of trended. Early on, you had the guns, a couple knife attacks, and then there's some car attacks in there. But the big thing with this slide is, if I let it run all the way, is there's really nowhere that's really immune to this. It could happen anywhere at any time, as we know here, as we've seen. If I do let it run, you'll see there's a pocket out here that nothing really happens, but there's really nothing out there. So that's why. So this kind of shows you the breakdown of the locations that the attacks happen: commerce, education, outdoor, or other. Next slide shows you the connection that the attackers have. Sometimes they have a connection. The majority, they have a connection, but it's almost 50-50. That maybe they just decide to have an episode and just pick a target of ease. And that's one reason we're here today, also to do a security assessment. We're down here to try to help harden this facility, and that's what we kind of try to do. It's kind of like the old adage: you don't have to be faster than the bear, you just have to be faster than the next person. So if you just harden your spot just a little bit, so if they're looking to pick out targets, they're like, well, that one's a little bit harder to hit. We'll go down the street and find the softer target. Then hopefully we move down the street to the softer target, we harden them, and they can't get there either. So this is always a good one. Those who can't remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And it's just some lessons we've learned. Santa Barbara, that was the knife attack. Orlando, Florida, we all know the Pulse nightclub. Las Vegas, Nevada. There's an interesting, I've got another presentation I do that's a run, hide, fight that has an interesting video. The Las Vegas attack, what a lot of folks don't know is the majority of the people that were wounded in there, it's because they didn't run. When the shots were first fired from the Mandalay Bay Hotel, everybody in the crowd, and I've got a video of it on the other presentation, but you hear everybody in the crowd saying, stay, stay, get down, get down. So they did. They all hunkered down and they all stayed put. Well, what they didn't know at the time is they were actually outside the ballistic range of the gun that the shooter was using. But when they all hunkered down, it was an asphalt parking lot. So the rounds would come out, hit the ground, and skid along the ground. So when they all laid down into the ground, they all laid down into the fire path. So if they would all got up and got out of there, they would have had some lower leg injuries, and you wouldn't have had as many fatalities. Then the next slide I use on that presentation shows a big elk hunter in like Colorado. So there's this whole herd of elk, or actually it's bighorn ram on the side of this mountain. The hunter fires one shot at the ram, and man, they scatter like crazy. So it's like you got to kind of think about what you're going to do, and then don't get paralyzed in the moment. But in a lot of these, and this is the New York City where the guy had the Home Depot truck and drove it down the green line and then ran over some other people. I think they just recently sentenced him. And then Sutherland Springs, Texas, this is the one where the guy went into the church, was actually stopped by one of the parishioners inside the church, but not before he wreaked some havoc. The number of deaths usually from an active shooter event is how quickly the police arrive, target availability. The average response time is 3 minutes. So in an active shooter event, if you can survive for 3 minutes, the chances of, if you can make it 3 minutes, the police are usually going to be there and they're usually going to take care of the problem. But as a lot of you know, I don't know if any of you guys have ever boxed or grappled or ground fight or done any of that stuff. 3 minutes is a lifetime when you're in a life or death situation. So that's why the one thing I always tell everybody with these presentations, and I should have started with it already and I kind of got behind a little bit, is have a plan. So like right now, if we're in here at this moment and you were to hear fireworks going off outside, what are you going to do? Would you go through the door toward the fireworks? Would you go away from it? what would you do? And then the other thing is, if you heard fireworks out here, is it normal to hear fireworks in the mosque? So don't assume it's fireworks, or don't assume it's a balloon popping. Assume it's a gunshot, and make plans accordingly. Because basically, there's 3 stages to the disaster response. You've got denial, which is one thing I was just talking about. If you hear the sounds going off that are abnormal for the area you are, don't be like, oh, it's nothing. It's just so and so. Well, it's not around the 4th of July. It's not any time that fireworks should be anywhere around, and you don't usually have fireworks in the mosque. Deliberation. That's the time you think, okay, maybe it's not fireworks. Now what should I do? The time you got to think about it. And then the decisive moment, that's the time that you actually take the action to say, I'm going to go through that door. I'm getting out of here. I'm not taking my stuff. I'm just getting out of here saving myself. And we'll go through each one of these. Denial is the first stage. No, it isn't. Yeah. So, let's see. Do I have audio? Oh, there's no audio. Oh. So deliberation, that's the time when you actually think about what you're going to do and make a plan and get out of here. So the one thing I always tell everybody is, my wife makes fun of me anywhere we go, whether we're in Walmart, we're in Target, I'm at her school. I'm always looking around. The first 10 seconds I'm in a room, I look around the room. It's like, okay, if I hear something over here, I'm getting my wife and daughter, I'm going out this door. And then, of course, it also, for us being law enforcement, do I have my daughter with me? Do I have my wife with me? Do I have my wife and daughter with me? If my wife and daughter are with me, my wife and daughter go one way, then I've got to go deal with the threat because it's just what I do. If I'm out with my daughter by myself, how do I respond to the threat? I made the decision a long time ago that I'm going to take my daughter and I'm going to get out of there. I'm going to get her safe, and then I'm going to come back. I've seen 2 instances where law enforcement officers have been out with their kids on their private time. An incident happened. They went to respond. There was one at a Walmart in Florida. Law enforcement officer tells his kid to stay in the car, and he goes to deal with the person who was basically a purse snatcher. Goes to deal with it, starts engaging the purse snatcher, and he's told his kid to stay in the car. Well, he looks, and the purse snatcher all of a sudden takes his gun from the law enforcement guy and goes this way. And the guy's like, what's he doing? And he shoots. Well, he shoots the kid because the kid didn't stay in the car like Dad said. And he knows if I shoot the kid, Dad's going to go to the kid, and I'm going to get out of here. So I made a decision a long time ago. I'm going to take care of my daughter, and then I'll come back. So it's just think about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And it's sad to say, when you go to the grocery store, when you go anywhere, have a plan to get out. Nobody, I'm sure, in Collierville and Kroger's that day thought there's going to be a shooting, but there was. And it's kind of sad, but it's the world we live in. And that plan can buy you that 30 seconds, that 10 seconds to get out. Because what you're going to notice, and there's some videos here later that actually show the Paris shooting and some other shootings where people just panic. They run around everywhere. And if you've taken a little bit of time to train and think about it beforehand, then your body is going to react a little different. And it comes to this point right here between deliberation, between the human brain and the lizard brain. And there's an article by Amanda Riley. It's called The Unthinkable. And what she did is basically she went through the history of mass casualty events from 9/11 to there was a ship that sunk off Antarctica. And basically what makes some people survive and other people not survive. And it's basically just having the fortitude to pre-plan, to think about disasters and what am I going to do in that moment. And when you spend a little bit of time preparing for that moment before it happens, it's the difference, because the human brain is a higher order thinking brain. We don't like to think about ourselves being primitive animal types, but in a high stress, high tension situation, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to lose all of your higher order thinking skills. Your human brain is going to go to sleep. You're going to become a lizard. And that lizard is basically trying to say, whether you run, how do I stay alive? It's just the basic survival instincts. So the more you prepare, the more you'll avoid shutting down in a crisis situation. because the human brain is it's gonna fight or flight or freeze. That's the three things it's gonna do. So the stress response, you'll go back. So as the stress response goes up, different things happen to your body. As you're at 60 beats a minute, we're all functioning fine. You've got your fine motor skills, you've got your cognitive ability, everything's fine. You're clear-headed, no matter. Go up to 90, you start losing some of your fine motor skills, and your head starts to get a little bit cloudy. You get up to 120, your head is kind of shrinking down. Okay, what do I got to do just to get through this, to survive it? And you start losing a lot of your major motor skills. And then 150, 170, same thing. You're basically your performance, your ability to perform under pressure gravely decreases. The more you think about and you deliberate before you get in a situation like this, the more your brain can process and can slow this process down. So you don't go from 0 to 100 and your body's shut down, because nobody wants to shut down. That plan is just crucial. You know, I wish we had a little bit of audio in here, but with this one you'll see. Watch how long it takes this person. How many times do you think she's gotten this baby out of this car seat in her life, ladies? I mean, how many times? And did you see her eventually? She just eventually rips her out. I bet on a normal Tuesday out in the parking lot, she can pop that out in like 2.2 seconds. But because there's actually a gunman over here off camera that you can't see, and let's see if I can rewind it. Watch, this guy the guy actually runs into a guy, falls down. So you can see they haven't really thought about or prepared for what's going to happen. So now you've got an actual shooter in the store, and the brains just go haywire. This is another one. You'll see this is, I don't know if you guys remember a few years ago, there was a concert where the stage caught on fire and then a bunch of people died inside that venue. Well, look here, there's 4 exits to the place. The fire starts here and starts coming back this way, but nobody actually took any time to think about what was happening. And also, if you're at a concert or you're at an event, you're at a speech, and it starts smoking, at first they thought it was the pyro from the show. But if you watch it a little bit later, you see the flames actually spread and they come up on the ceiling. That's clearly not pyro. But we go back to the denial phase. They're all in denial about what's actually happening. And then by the time they realize it, it's too late and they all rush. So in the mass panic, because this is 30 seconds after the fire started, in the mass panic to get out of there, by the time basically the crowd mentality takes over and they all rush out. I'll show you a diagram of where the bodies were found in just a second, but their deliberation has completely shut down. Their bodies are just in fight or flight mode, and nobody actually took a time to look around before they were in there to think about the alternative exits. So here you go. This was the main entrance where everybody came in and out. This was the stage exit that anybody could have gone out. These are the other 2 exits. One's by the main bar, and another one's back here off the kitchen. So they found 31 bodies stacked in the main hallway. So when everybody freaked out and didn't really think about having any kind of alternative exits or the windows, nobody used the windows, they all got here, that got clogged up and became a fatal funnel. Some passed in different areas, but they were mostly overcome by the smoke. But this was actually, a highly survivable event if people would have just had a little bit of a plan beforehand and then not really had to react when their heart rate was so high and the stress level was so high. And this wasn't even a shooter. This was it was a fast-moving fire once they got started, but they had 30 seconds, and you could easily clear that place in 30 seconds through 4 doors. But that's why it's very, very important. Just take that 10, 20 seconds when you walk in somewhere. Where am I going to go? If there's an event over here, how can I go this way? If there's an event over there, how can I go this way? There's going to be some facilities that you get in that you're going to be like, man, if anything happens here, I'm just hosed because there's one way in and one way out. That's when the fight comes in. I don't want to dwell on that right there. But for deliberation, the more you can keep yourself calm, breathe, and then shift your emotions to not freak out, not worry about anything, and just try to stay focus so that you can survive, and then you can freak out when you get in your car and you're getting out of there. And stay fit. Try to stay in shape, because studies have shown the fitter people tend to survive because they tend to be the ones that can get away, or they can fight them if they have to. This is the part of the plan. Script it. I mean, I hate to say it, but where you're going to go, what your plans are. For the active shooter plan for this facility, if you have an active shooter plan, practice it. An active shooter plan with no practice is worthless, because nobody's going to know what to do. Drill it, practice it, make it common, and don't just do it. Don't practice it like, oh, we got to do the active shooter drill. So, okay, well, active shooter drill. Okay, we'll go halfway do it. Do it like it's for real, because one day it may never be real, and that'd be good. But the world we live in, it's very easily that it could be real. I mean, there's so many extreme people out there and so many crazy ideologies and stuff that you never know who's going to be mad at who for what. So you got to prepare. And I mean, the more you prepare, the more you practice, the better off you'll be. This is Rick Riscola. A lot of people don't know about him. He was actually a Morgan Stanley security guy at the World Trade Center. He was a former Army guy. He was one of the guys that was in the Band of Brothers movie. He basically, after the first World Trade Center bombing, he made it mandatory that they do active shooter practice and they do active shooter drills. I think they were on like the 56th floor or something of the World Trade Center. He would actually make them do drills where he would make those executives get up from their trading desk, walk all the way down to the floor, out the lobby, and then let them go back up. And he wouldn't take no for an answer. So when 9/11 happened, he put his hat on, got everybody out, let them all out. Morgan Stanley didn't lose a single employee because of what he did and the way he had drilled it. He actually passed away. I guess it's not true. They lost him because after he got all his people out, he had heard there was a couple of executives that were still trapped on the floor. He went back into the building, went up to go get them, and he was killed when the towers fell. But he had a plan, and he probably saved 3,500 people that day just because he had stayed on them. And they all made fun of him and because of it, but he stayed on them. He'd have his bullhorn, his little reflective vest, and made them drill. And that's one reason that they didn't lose anybody. And then the decisive moment. So now you've been confronted with an incident. You've been confronted with a shooter. You've been confronted with an attacker. What are you going to do? Have you made your plan? And I know I don't have the audio, but this basically, if you guys remember, I think it was the Paris train attacks where the guy was going with a knife and the 3 soldiers from the U.S. jumped up and took the guy down. I think they made a movie about him. This is actually their medal ceremony. So they were there, something happened, and they're like, all right, well, it is what it is. We got to do it. Yeah, so denial, don't deny. If you hear gunshots, immediately switch to deliberation. Say, okay, I hear something. It ain't right. It's ticking. My hairs are standing up on the back of my neck. Boom, what am I going to do? Don't wait. Don't be like, what is it? Go. Move to the next. That, if I could play it, it's actually the sound of a gunshot, so you could hear a gunshot in here. Plain dead. This is a victim from the Virginia Tech shooting. She played dead in the Virginia Tech auditorium. She was actually shot 3 times. She just happened to survive. I can tell you, I watched the videos from the Carterville shooting. There was a lady that there's a self-checkout things, and where you set your stuff down here, and then you scan it and you bag it on this side, how it's got like that little thing. She tried to hide right here. The shooter just walked by and shot her. There was another one where the lady tried to play dead out back. The shooter hadn't been out back yet. So he knew he hadn't shot her. He shot her laying in the parking lot. So don't play dead. You can hide and hope. If you can hide and properly barricade yourself, and when I say properly barricade yourself, like if you can lock it off and harden it where nobody can get in, then that hiding to me is okay. But if you can't, really, I think, and you guys may disagree with me, but I think you should run, and then if you have to, fight. Hiding in a soft location is not a good thing, because it's just a matter of if you're found. If that shooter comes like in this thing, You're fine under that desk unless that shooter comes around the desk here, and then there you are. What are you going to do? You can't really defend yourself from that position. So in the deliberation phase, what they teach is avoid, run, denies, hide, defend is fight. So that's the old run, hide, fight philosophy. Basically, alert just rebranded it. Like I said, I endorse this one and this one. This one is a little bit tricky. They've got some examples. This is actually a school board meeting in Panama City. You don't need the audio here. Basically, they're having a hearing, and a gunman actually charges in. Oh, how do I do it? I don't think he's even put anything out. Yeah, I don't know what's up, man. But you'll see the gunman's there. He's got the gun. I mean, I'll give the school board guy credit. He just sits there and talks to him. And then, my video froze. You'll see, everybody just sits there. All right, these people could easily get up and get out of there. Finally, they do. It just takes them a minute. This lady right here decides, this one's kind of funny, but not. She tries to come back as a hero in a second, but nobody else was on the same page to help her. So here she comes. She's going to take him out. It didn't work. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it needs some help. Everybody else just sits there. He ends up shooting like 12 times. By the grace of God, he's actually a terrible shot, and nobody gets hurt. The police show up and arrest him. He was mad over some policy that the school was teaching, but he thought it was bad enough that he should go in there and try to shoot up the school board. Like I'm saying, the world's absolutely insane. So avoid, if you can run, leave as soon as possible. Know your exits, and then call 911 once you get away and once you're safe. Don't worry about reporting it until you're safe, because you can't do anybody any good if you're reporting it and you're not safe. Where's the video? So the gunman goes in. This is the Paris shooting. And eventually there people start getting out of there. Avoid here. She's in the back room hiding, but she's hiding right by a door with a push bar. She can just push the door and go out. So get out. But that's the thing. Your brain shuts down. You don't think. It's easy to sit here in the picture right now and think about it, but every time I show this video, and there's a ladder here where she could possibly go up to the roof and get access, but it's or she could try to lock. So if you're gonna hide, make sure you lock the door, get out of sight. There's things you can buy for different doors to secure them a little easier. The heavier, the better. The more. Like door stops are great to holding doors open, but they're also great if you put them on the backside. Nice cheap way to keep the door shut. So you put a door stop here, nobody can push in and get in. It's a nice cheap way to barricade a door. But here, the same lady, she could use this, barricade that door. Door stop. Outward opening doors, use ropes, tension sleeves, whatever you got to kind of tie that door up to keep it from coming open. And there's a ton of stuff people will sell you, like these commercial locks. They're great. My wife's school used to have, it was super simple. It was 2 welded brackets on the door and basically a horseshoe thing that went down in there. And, you can't do anything with that steel. And it wasn't that expensive. So positioning. Grab the gun, fight if you have to. You'll see this guy. He's like, something's going on. All right, forget it. I'm going to take this wine bottle and use it as a club if I have to. Here we go. So at least he had a chance. He was trying to come up with something. This person decides to play dead. Gunman hasn't been back here yet. Usually don't shoot people where you haven't been. So it's There's actually a video of her getting shot, but it's not in. Don't put it here. Uh, this is Lieutenant Brian Murphy. He was in an active shooter event. He's like, I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to let my kids and my wife down. I'm not going to die. So he fought the guy off. So just know your surroundings. If you can avoid it, get out. If you have to fight, fight. And if you have to hide, hide. What you do matters. So the attack starts. Are there primary exits? Yes. Get out. No. Deny. Can you do it? Are there other exits? If you can get out, still get out. No. Then the last chance, you got to fight. You got to defend. It's kind of repetitive, but I mean the biggest thing is have a plan. Think about what you're going to do, and see what's going to happen. Virginia Tech, another good case study. I'll get on. This is the second floor of the classrooms where the shooter came in. And I'll click through it here in a minute, and just they're all classes are going on in all these rooms at the same time, but the actions that each classroom takes, it makes a huge difference. All right, go back. So this classroom, basically, he goes in, starts shooting. The reds are the fatalities. The yellows are the casualties, the wounded. The greens are the ones that actually survived. So you can see this door was completely unlocked. This door was also completely unlocked. The shooter just came in and had free access. This one was too. This one, they actually barricaded the door. The teacher held the door while the students got out the window because they actually jumped down from the second floor. Had less casualties. This one, the students actually barricaded the door, and what they did was it was an inward opening door, so the students laid down and put their feet on the door and held it shut. It was a solid door, so he couldn't shoot through the door, and he could shoot through the door, but he couldn't see through the door. So when he was shooting high, and everybody in this room survived. So you can see the differences. Like this one really didn't have a chance. The door was wide open, and that was the first room he hit. But as they heard the shots on down the hall, these rooms took action, and that action saved lives. So there again, it's you hear it, and how fast can you click from denying what's actually going on to saying we've got a problem, and then how can I survive this problem? I think that's a really good. So it shows who got shot and who got killed per room. So when the police arrive, this is also a very, very important part. Forget your stuff, forget your cell phones, forget anything. Go out with your hands up, because the last thing you want to do is get shot by a cop on your way out because he thinks a cell phone is a gun. And I know, but the cops are going to be responding, and they're going to have the same tunnel vision because I don't know if you guys remember a few years ago, there was an active shooter reported at Jonesboro, Arkansas, at Arkansas State. I used to work in Jonesboro, and I was over here shooting at the range. I had driven back into town. I just stopped at Casey's gas station, and I was getting gas, and one of my colleagues called and said, hey, there's an active shooter at Arkansas State University. I'm like, crap. So I called dispatch, and I'm like, is this real? And at first they're like, I can't talk to you. I'm like, what's Brad from the FBI? Jonesboro is real small, and I was the main FBI guy that dealt with the university. So they're like, yeah, it is. Get over here. So I jump in my car. I just actually drank my pre-workout. I was going to the gym. I just finished the range. I was going to the gym. I wasn't planning on going to an active shooter. So, yeah, I was amped up. So I jump in the car, get over there. I stopped by I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jonesboro and Arkansas State, but as you turn into the university, there's a baseball field right there. So I stopped by the baseball field. Like, I better throw my vest on. I throw my vest on. But in the fog of war and in the whole, with the brain not really working really clearly for dispatch and for me, I didn't ask where the shooter was. They said they're by the university center. I'm like, okay. Well, they didn't say don't come in the main drag to the university center. So I did. And I put my vest on, jump in, and that road comes up a little windy thing. You go down a little hill, and then you pop up, and the university center's right here, and there's like a horseshoe-shaped courtyard. Well, he had pulled his vehicle into the middle of that, had a shotgun and a propane tank threatening to blow up his car. So I pull up, and I'm like the fifth person there, but there's 4 AR-15s pointed back this direction at me because everybody's on the backside. I'm like, oh, crap. So I throw my car in park, haul butt all the way around. Meanwhile, my wife's calling, hey, do you know there's an active shooter? you can't not answer your wife's call. So I'm like, yeah. She's like, why are you huffing and puffing? I was like, well, I'm running around a building trying not to get shot at the moment. In hindsight, I won't answer that call next time. So I got over there, and the sad part about that whole thing, going back to like even the brain functioning, the shooter had called the police and the news agencies before he got on campus. He was basically a disabled veteran that had just been diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer and told basically to go home and die. He was kicked out of the VA. They weren't going to give him any services. He just wanted services. He was trying to get arrested to go to jail to get medical help. So we could have arranged that a whole lot easier if he'd have just told us on the front end. And then, because like I said, I'm a negotiator, so we're negotiating with him, and we finally get through all this stuff, and he turns over all his paperwork, and he's going to get out of the car and come. So our the Jonesboro SWAT team pulls up, and they get out in their little phalanx, and they're going to him. Well, I'm up by the sniper. He pops open the driver's side door and rolls out with the shotgun in his hand. And as he rolls out, he racks around into the shotgun. And I'm thinking, oh my God, so I roll back and put my hands in my ears because I didn't have any ear protection, and the sniper's right there. But he racked around and threw the gun down and gave himself up. But by the grace of God, that sniper had more patience than I did because I thought he was dead. So they got him some treatment. He's actually still alive, but a resident of the Arkansas Department of Corrections. So I digress a lot. So basically, when law enforcement shows up, they're going to go stop the guy first, or the girl, or whoever's doing the shooting, whoever's doing the killing. They're going to go stop that. And then they're going to come back, and they're going to stop the bleed, stop the dying, and then they're going to evacuate the injured, and then they'll start worrying about the other stuff. That was one thing the Kroger shooting did really well. They were able to, because of the way we train now, and we bring EMS in, like we go in, and you as you clear, now the EMS will go in behind you to treat the wounded. In the Pulse nightclub shooting, they wouldn't do that. They actually had to haul out the victims, haul them across the street, put them in the back of trucks, and carry them to the ambulance because the medics wouldn't go in until the scene was clear. In Carterville, they actually had all the wounded out and gone before they could even get 4 medevac helicopters to Carterville to land. So that was one reason. That was the first success for the U.S. for that, which I'm kind of proud of. That's why out of that shooting, there was only one casualty, and that poor lady just happened to be the very first person he met as he walked through the front door, and it's just wrong place, wrong time. And she got called home. So this is just a video that kind of shows when police arrive, it's going to be kind of chaotic. They're going to give commands, get your hands up, get out of there. Just listen to them, do what they say. They're going to be amped up too. Everybody's going to be concerned. Like I said, super amped up because I hit the pre-workout. So hopefully they don't get that bad trifecta. But the funny thing about that is I actually left my car on with my lights on. Yeah, if you leave your lights on with your car running, with it not out running fully, it will run your battery down. So as the news helicopter's covering it, I'm changing the battery. That's a fun one to tell your bosses too. Medical, the EMS are going to come in now right behind and kind of try to stop the bleed. There are some courses. I don't know if you guys would be interested in having people come out and teach these, the Stop the Bleeding courses. It's stopthebleed.org. It's run by Homeland Security. One of our former SWAT doctors in Jonesboro, he would teach this. They actually have like not real live, but mannequins or whatever that will bleed. I mean, they're just like humans. I mean, it's crazy the technology they have. But I can put you guys in touch with some people that can come do that kind of training as well. Because that's the other thing I want to touch on is with this stuff. It's also if there is an event that happens, you kind of need to think about having a blowout kit or a medical kit somewhere around your facility that you can have. Yeah, I know you had it. So I knew you looked familiar. You've heard of this spiel before, haven't you? So you have it, and you don't necessarily have to buy the high-speed tactical tourniquets and all the top-line stuff. I mean, my first blowout kit, I was a GS-10 making $45,000 in South Texas. I had tampons, maxi pads, whatever, because a tampon is meant to stop a bleeding hole. If you got what's a bullet wound? A bleeding hole. You rip that sucker out, stick it in, throw some gauze on there and some tape, and you got just about the best thing you got outside of, you don't need the fancy high-speed stuff. You just need to know how to, you need to learn how to plug the wound, cut the blood flow, and move on. And you can have the fancy tourniquets. I've got one in this bag and probably 4 in my truck, but your belt will work, whatever you got to use. I'm by no means an EMT. I can cut blood flow off, but and expect personal issues afterwards. It's a traumatic event. People are going to need to seek counseling and seek some mental health work. So think about not only developing a plan to survive the attack, but also how are you going to get your people back up on their feet and make sure that everybody's taken care of. This is Victoria Soto. She was one of the survivors that helped get the kids out. She actually was killed at Sandy Hook, saving her class. This was so. If you notice, I don't go through here. We don't talk about any of the active shooters and actually talk about their names. It's because a lot of these people do it for recognition, and I refuse to say their names. I refuse to give them any recognition. So in summary, active shooter events, just make sure you have a plan. Think about the plan. Think about what you're going to do. Test it. Then be prepared to have a disaster response plan and take care of your folks afterwards. And then, of course, the main thing is avoid, deny, defend. If something happens, get out of denial, into deliberation, and then how are you going to position yourself to best go forward? A lot of people ask me how to talk to kids about this stuff, and quite honestly, I could probably put my 10-year-old daughter up here and she could give this class, unfortunately, because she was actually with me Thursday night when Daryl called me about the shooting at Wolf Chase. And we were actually going, my wife teaches at Arlington. We were going to the school for the STEM night. So the first thing after we talk about what we need to do to get our people out there, she goes running into school to tell moms, hey, we worked another active shooter. I'm like, ugh, it's probably not the best dad moment. But I try to be honest. I try to be open. And because they need to know too that they need to plan. They need to think about it. And if they hear something that they're not comfortable with, to follow your lead and not ask questions, because the last thing you need to be is them slowing everybody down. I don't go into graphic detail with her, but I go into enough to know, like last year she had a class that was the second room from the door. That door emptied out onto a softball field. On the other side of the softball field is a strip center that has some stores in it. Inside one of those stores is a store that's owned by her old softball coach, and then the beauty salon where I get my hair cut. I'm like, you just run out there, you go find them, and you get out of here. So just think about it, have a plan, think about what you're going to do. And that's all I have. If you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain whatever. Oh, yeah.
If I understood correctly, initially there is no profile about an active shooter, right? Seems like we don't have a reason why. It could be multiple reasons.
Right.
What is it? And seems like this is the only country where you have an active shooter on a daily basis.
Yes, I have a lot of theories for that one. It's a lot of it's the access to firearms. A lot of it is the culture that they're raised in. A lot of it, quite honestly, and like I said, you can't record this and broadcast me everywhere, but is the degradation of our mental health system in this country. It's just it's a whole compilation of factors, and I don't really understand why we can't get ahead of it either. It's 100%, both sides. Yeah, a lot of it just, like there was one slide on here that basically showed whether the people had connections to the property or didn't have connections. Sometimes they don't even have they don't have a connection to where they go do the event. And there's really, because at a Kroger's, anybody could be there. You've had like Sandy Hook Elementary, Parkland, those are actually schools So it's really, I wish there was a way we could actually do a little bit of voodoo, however, and like predict it. But really, they're usually male. They're not female. There have been some female ones. It's hard. San Bernardino, they hit a work Christmas party. The Pulse, they hit a nightclub. So I mean, it really varies all over the spectrum.
And mostly what I see is the and mostly what I see is the response of the agencies after the fact, right?
Yes.
So I guess there's no, I
That,
guess you guys don't have any information leading up to it because half of them are done by connection, right?
well, yes and no.
So my question is, seemed like the best approach is to do continuous training and practice, just like they do fire drill in schools as well. So just having one session, and most of the people who come here regularly are not here too.
Yes.
So is that the best
Yes.
approach to having regular drills and just?
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, and again, I've got some partners back here, and they can chime in anytime they want to. My personal thing is to have the plan, drill the plan, and I told Mr. Khan that if you guys need me to come back to do this for multiple people, I mean, I'm happy to give this to anybody that'll listen to it, because the thing is, if you have that plan, you think about it before, that increases your survivability, and I want to do that to as many people as I can, because we can't predict it. We can't. Now, I'm not going to say, like, we get a ton of tips where people are posting stuff online, they're doing this or that, talking about doing stuff like this, and we do a lot of stuff to interdict that kind of stuff. But what you also run into in this country, unfortunately, is the First Amendment. There's a lot of stuff you can do and say until you act. There's not a whole lot legally we can do. And that was one reason that the West Tennessee Mental Health Partnership became so important to me. It's because if you can get there and these people are projecting this violence or whatever online, and you can see that there might be a mental health issue there, and you can get a doctor to come in and try to give them a prescription for treatment and then get them into that system, which is flawed too. That's not perfect either, but it's just another tool that we can try to use to try to, because if we can off-ramp one or two people that way and keep them from actually doing a shooting, then that's a win too. We recently had a case where a guy was caught doing, I think, 120, got pulled over, put in the back of the car. He tells the Shelby County deputy that when he gets out of there, he's going to do it up like Texas. This was right after Uvalde, so everybody's thinking he's going to go shoot a school. He said he's going to go get his tactical gear and his guns and go pull Uvalde. Okay, we can hold him on the speeding charge, but that threat is not really. He made it verbally. So for the federal system to have a threat, we'd have to have it by wire, which means basically it's got to be an email communication or it's a telephonic communication. So our hands are tied. We have no hammer to use on this guy. Shelby County had the speeding ticket and the verbal threat. What that person goes before a magistrate judge and is actually ROR'd, released on their own recognizance, to go back to his house where his tactical gear is. So we relied on our West Tennessee Mental Health Partnership for that one. I called somebody at the mental health hospital. That we went out, interviewed the guy, got him to agree to go into the mental health system. He went in, got evaluated. They deemed he needed to be committed. He was committed. Then we had him go before the probate judge that basically can adjudicate you competent or incompetent. He was adjudicated incompetent, so now he cannot buy firearms anymore. And we got the dad to actually talk and surrender. He did have firearms and tactical gear. He could have done exactly what he wanted to do, and he lived right across the street from the school. When he said do it up like Texas, we all thought Uvalde. In a subsequent interview later on, he actually said he wanted to do it like Dallas. I don't know if you guys remember a few years ago when the guy was outside the Dallas police precinct and was killing cops. That's what he wanted, to kill cops. He did because he was mad at the Shelby County Sheriff's deputy. He didn't want to actually go do a school shooting, but he could have. And come to find out, he had a long history of mental health issues, and he was 22, I think, at that point. Well, when he turned 18, he quit taking his meds, and then his parents couldn't make him take the meds. So you see, there's all kinds of pitfalls. So that's why we had to reach out to the mental health side of the mental health community and the law enforcement community and be like, hey, what can we do as a whole to better our community. And that's the best way we've found so far to try to kind of fix part of that. But yeah, that's the problem is there's no hammers, and then or there's no way for us to put them away. And even if they do, I mean, the amount of time they get for threats is like a slap on the wrist. So, yeah, that's why like education and this kind of stuff is the best way to go right now. And that's one reason, like I'm a supervisor now, and I don't really do these as much as I used to, but I still like to come out and do them because it's important to me, because that's part of the community, and we need to protect each other.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, we want to thank you and your friends for being here. It's a very valuable lecture. Closer? Okay. And this is very, very important and valuable lecture for all of us. It's an eye-opening to start with. But we have our concerns also, and maybe you could clarify that to our community.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I belong to a different mosque than this.
Right.
And I'm sure we're going to have you there very soon. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
The question is that whenever we hear on the news there is an active shooting or a terrorist act or anything abnormal in our life, the first thing that comes to our lives is that to pray and say, I hope his name is not Muhammad or Abdul or related to one of them or a recent convict.
Yes.
Also, that's even worse.
I know.
So this is our daily prayer that it's not.
Right.
And most of the time, when the clouds clear out and dust settles, it is somebody who snapped.
Yeah.
Or mental health.
Yeah.
Or issues with his wife. Or ex. While if it is Muhammad and Abdul, it's a terrorist before we even know his last name.
That's a bias in our country, and I'm sorry for
But
it.
that's a stigma that hurts the community,
I know.
their kids,
I know.
and puts extra stress and pressure on everybody. The community itself, your neighbors, your mosque, synagogue, whatever.
Yeah. And I'll just be, I mean, like I told you, I'm blatantly honest. As a white Christian dude working terrorism, that's been one of the hardest things for me to try to overcome. Is when I walk in, of course, the facade goes up, the guard goes up because of the history of the FBI after 9/11. And I get it. I understand it. I wasn't there then. I didn't do any of it. I can't really go back and make up for it. But a lot of it, quite honestly, is just after that, the way this country is dominated so much by what's put in the media, what's put in the news. And quite frankly, I quit watching it because you can sit there and watch it, and everybody has their own agenda. And the only way to get past it that I've found is just to try to interact with people on a daily basis to let them see that I am who I am. I do things the way I do it, and build that personal relationship, and try to not ignore, but try to overcome the stigma that's put on as an FBI agent or as a Muslim or just because of the events. You should be judged by who you are and what you do, not some stereotype that's out there. And like I said, honestly, even as a Southern dude talking like I talk, most people think I'm redneck as hell, and I have no tolerance for anybody. So, I mean, I'll admit it. So, I mean, I come from a town about it's 2.5 hours from here, about an hour and a half outside of Nashville in the middle of nowhere. And everybody thinks you're dumb, country hick, whatever. It's just, I mean, unfortunately, the way our society is they try to put people in pigeonholes, and it's not fair, it's not right. But all we can do as individuals, in my opinion, is just try to work together to overcome that, to show the world that, look, we're not like that. Now, how do we change that on a global scale? Get on TikTok or social media, because that's all anybody seems to freaking pay attention to anymore.
No. Also, we thank the FBI and all the federal agents, because they do communicate with the people in the Muslim community mainly.
Right.
They come to our mosque after 9/11, after World War Trade Center. They came down. We have channel of communication, and the picture became clearer as we found out that the FBI was trapping the people. Yeah. People were not terrorists.
Right.
FBI was trapping them, sitting next to them, bringing a convict after a week or two, a month or two. Assalamu alaikum, this government is corrupt, let's do something about it. Right. And the guy was innocent all the way.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother. Yeah.
We all got problems. All right.
Can arming yourself change the outcome of a shooting or no?
That's a that's the I guess the $6 million question. If you have a firearm and you are proficient with the firearm, I would say it helps. But that's the key, and that's the one thing I won't do in these speeches. Is I don't necessarily advocate for anybody to be armed or not be armed. That's a personal decision that you have to make, because a lot of people think that carrying a gun is going to make them better, which it could help the situation, but you also have to be prepared to have that firearm and to have the ability and make the conscious decision that you're willing to use that firearm to take somebody's life. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with that decision. And if you're not comfortable with it and you are introducing another firearm into the situation, then it could be a problem. So that's a personal issue, and it also depends on how well you train and how proficient you are. And then there's a lot of other factors of where the shooter comes in, how you are. Does that shooter get a drop on you before you knew what happened? So I can't say that it will increase the chances of survivability. That's a hard question.
Yeah. Most of your presentation talked about running in order to avoid the situation. In the Virginia Tech, the classroom that lost the least amount of students, or really zero, were the ones that barricaded.
Yeah.
So we have daycares, we have Sunday schools. In the event of children in classroom settings, is that your opinion to really get the kids inside into a place that can be barricaded?
I need to see your daycare first. I would still say get them out if you can. I don't know what age groups you're talking about.
2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, that's a tough one. But I mean, the problem is like these if a shooter was out there with the AR-15, like assault rifle, like most of them are commonly used, their rounds are going to cut through these walls like butter. So if you're hiding in a room and they start spraying, and if you're, how's the daycare set up with your windows? Is it like these? Yeah.
Maybe we can go
I mean,
there,
you're a butt. Even if you barricade that door, you're a butt stroke or one round through that door, the glass is gone, and he can just. I mean, Mike, what do you think? Get him out? It's tough. I know.
At public schools that's their training. So my kids every month they do turn off the light, draw the blind, and they just hide in the classrooms.
I've gotten into it with my daughter's teacher too, because there's cinder block walls, and what I've always taught is their doors are solid. Is get the kids by the door. If the guy happens to breach the door and come through the door, it's a bad day for the teacher. The teacher's got to fight, but the kids are right by the door. They should be trained to get out and go. But yeah, a lot of schools won't do that. They want them to turn off the lights, go hide in the back, get behind some stuff. It's just a matter of how good they can harden that door. If you can harden it where that guy can't get through and no rounds are going to come through or minimal, then you're okay. I mean, you've only got to last 3 or 4 minutes. And I know in my daughter, one of my daughter's daycares, when they were little like that, they had what basically looked like an equivalent of a playpen on wheels. They would just chunk the kids in those playpens, and that's the way they took them to like the playground and the stuff like that, so they could keep them together until they got them in the other fence. So they would throw them in there and just take them out and get out of there too. So I don't know if that's an option. That's a hard question.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'd probably just say a real good rule of thumb is if there are windows, like back here, it's best to get out. But if it's a solid door, it's best to lock it and stay there. Some schools have those doors where it's a really tiny window, where you can just kind of like, put someone's face up there and look through it. That's also the kind of window where you probably want to have a good solid door and lock the door and stay. But yeah, big windows, I mean, anyone can break right through them. So, yeah. Hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to jump back to the previous question real fast about arming yourselves. I should have pulled the data up on this before I came, because I'm very like data driven, but you guys can pull it up online. But you'll see from all the active attacks in our country, if a civilian confronts the bad guy first, before police get there, the amount of fatalities decreases a lot. Okay, so I'm not sure if that's a good answer or a bad answer, but if a civilian confronts a suspect first, the amount of people statistically who are killed decreases drastically. Okay, is that fair enough? Okay,
Yeah.
sure. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, of all the cases I've seen, it's been someone armed with a weapon. But yeah, so yeah, it's kind of a real loaded question and kind of a short answer to a really good question. But yeah, if you guys go online tonight and look up the actual data on it, if a civilian confronts a person first before police get there, then it does save lives. Okay.
And legally, you're allowed to shoot, right? Even though you don't get reprimanded in any way?
No, if it's a life or death situation, then a civilian is legally allowed to use lethal force. The definition is the person needs to be in fear of bodily injury or death. Severe bodily injury or death.
Thank you for doing this. My question is there a set frequency for how much you should do a drill? Is it like institution specific, like a mosque versus a school versus a hospital? Or should it at least be yearly, regardless of institution? How often should there be a drill?
I mean, I would probably do it at least quarterly, just so that you have. The more you drill it, the better it'll be. There's no set rule or set. It's how seriously do you take it? How often do you do it? The more you do it, the more it'll become natural. I would just do as much as you can.
Thank you for coming. I think I walked in when you were saying that you do assessments.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I think that it would be very good to do an assessment here because the size of the facility matters.
That's what we're about to do when we get done here.
Yeah, and the logistics, the time when most people are here, the majority of people are here, or when it's not. And one thing about arming yourselves, training, just giving people guns. Tennessee, everybody can have a gun, and you could do more damage. So you need people who are actually highly trained by professionals.
Yeah.
If you're going to have people in here.
Well, I mean,
carrying guns.
yeah, because every round you fire has got liability attached to it. It's all good as long as you shoot the shooter, but if you end up hitting some innocent bystanders, there's a courtroom waiting.
Thank you for being here. I also have a question regarding arming yourself. Lately, like the media and I don't know if you've heard, because of these school shootings, would you say that, I just wanted your thoughts, like, is it okay, do you think, for like teachers to arm themselves to protect those kids? Or like, say in this facility, if we had like a designated person who has training and can like arm themselves to protect us,
Yeah, I mean,
would you recommend that?
Yeah, 100%. If you can have the armed security guard or the armed school resource officer, anything like that, then yeah, I mean, like Mike said, if you have trained people that know what they're doing, it will actually bring it down. The only thing that scares me with teachers, like my wife's a teacher, my mom was a teacher, so I've grown up around teachers my whole life, and I also know teachers are made to see the better in everybody and the better in the kids. I don't know that they're the right mindset to turn loose with a bunch of guns to protect the kids. Plus, I've seen a lot of teachers that are absent-minded and they lose stuff left and right. You don't want somebody leaving a gun in the bathroom and then the kid finding it. That's a whole separate issue. But yeah, as long as they're trained and they're responsible, then, I mean, I would think it would help. Because if I'm a shooter and I'm going to go hit a school and I know they've got 3 or 4 people that are armed to protect them, I'm going to go find the one that's not.
How your church does security, so that she kind of has an example of what that looks like.
Yeah, sure. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I go to a large Christian church, and we have guys just in plain clothes that are pretty much greeters, you know, plain clothes like polo shirts, and we cover our weapons up. But we also have, you know, like the guys who are kind of like the security have been there for a long time, so we can kind of spot a visitor, right? So we'll know if someone comes in, but we're also, we're there as greeters to welcome people to come worship, but also just kind of get like a quick feel for them as they pass us. So every entrance to the church has someone who's armed, but their weapon is concealed. We all have like little earpieces so we can talk on the radio, which is very important, have communication on the radio. Typically, if we see someone that is carrying a backpack, for us, it's weird if someone. It's very normal if someone has like a bunch of kids with them and they're carrying like a backpack that has Elmo on it or something like that. That's very normal, right? But it's not really normal to see like a single guy carrying a backpack into our church. So we would, in something like that, we would just like one of us would just like sit close to him, follow him in, and we're just in normal church clothes. We just sit behind him. Because we have no idea what's in his backpack, and he's a visitor that no one's seen before. But yeah, being like a welcoming church or a welcoming mosque, it is a little tricky where you kind of want guys who are there who are armed, but you also want to be very welcoming, right? I'm not sure if you want to talk about like the armed guard thing. Like our church, the guys who, because I'm law enforcement, I don't have to do this, but our church requires anyone who's carrying a weapon to be a Tennessee licensed armed guard. I think that's for liability. Yeah, liability. So if there is a shooting, they're actually an employee of the church as opposed to just a random citizen. I'm trying to think what else, but yeah, just having guys. If there's something that's really bad going to happen, we want it to happen in the parking lot, right? We don't want it to happen inside. So if we see someone obviously with a rifle that comes out, that's really unusual, right? To come out of your car with a rifle in a parking lot. Well, we would confront them immediately in the parking lot, and they wouldn't even make it inside. If someone comes in there with a handgun concealed, that's a little harder, but hopefully we could kind of get there quickly. The backpack thing I covered, we just try to. We don't like people carrying backpacks, but we also want to be welcoming, so we just kind of sit close to them. Am I forgetting anything? Yeah.
I've heard it discussed that before.
Yeah. Yeah, the biggest thing off what Mike's saying is to try to take. You've got your mosque and your community here. You want to build that protection in those concentric circles and try to push the threat as far out as you can. So that's why those greeters are crucial.
Since your initial recommendation was to run, is it productive or counterproductive to pull the fire alarm to alert everybody, because not everybody may be aware in a large facility that there's an active shooter event?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that it's counterproductive because you could let everybody know to get out. The only thing about pulling the fire alarm is some people's fire exits, or the way they're trained to do the fire exit, you may funnel people past the shooter. That's the only thing I could think of. Yeah, and then I used to be, when I did the WMD stuff, one of my jobs was the red hat stuff or come up with bad plans to do stuff, and one of the plans is you pull the fire alarm and you let people run outside, and then you have shooters actually waiting in the parking lot to take you out. So it's a double-edged sword.
Thank you all for coming. I just had a few things I wanted to ask and then add. We do have a first aid team here. I'm going to make a shameless plug again. Next Saturday between 1 and 5, we have the first aid training and the emergency medical response team training. So please come to that. It'll be in here 1 to 5. CPR, defibrillators, all of that. Bleeding control. The concept of a security team, I know some of the mosques here in town, they do have a security team, and they've had kind of formal security training. Some of the folks are a little hesitant to talk about doing a security team with all of the implications of, Muslims are taking security training, that type of thing. Not wanting to end up on any more watch lists. But, from what you're telling us, it sounds like it might be beneficial to have a security team. How would that work in terms of like legally and, from our end of things, we can get people, but, how would it work legally in terms of having a security team who watches out for things and maybe even have armed security from people within the congregation like what y'all do?
when you ask legally, what do you mean? Yeah, what do you mean?
Like if there's a,
I'm a former attorney, but I'm not here to give legal advice.
No, like, if there's a situation and, like if there's, God forbid, a situation where you have to use deadly force.
Yeah.
Try to save lives. What would the implications be for that?
I mean, like Mike said earlier, if there's somebody actually doing stuff and they're using it to save lives, then you're going to be you'll be protected. I don't know. I'm sure you guys have a general counsel for the mosque. They would probably be the best person to ask legally how to set that up, just to make sure you're covered. Because I don't know what insurances you guys have, how all that's set up. You need to contact your attorney for the facility, and then or for the organization. I don't know how it's set up. Like as a former attorney, it could be either way. And then get with them and see what your insurance covers and how it does it. And I bet it'll end up having to be like his church is set up to where you guys have to get them training, almost certified to a certain extent, and then as a member of the staff here, whether they're paid or unpaid, that doesn't matter. It's the services they're rendering.
Do you guys do that security team type training or no?
See, the problem, and I'll be honest, the problem with that, if we came out and trained them and then something happens, you come back to us and say the liability type factor, that's why they won't let us do that. I mean, even for the security assessment, we can give you guys suggestions. I can't tell you what to or not to do. So that's.
There are several really good private organizations that do it. A couple quick Google searches, and you guys will find some locally that provide that. Medical stuff. 99.9% of, and we call it a safety team, not a security team, but 99% of what our safety team does at our church is medical stuff. People, whatever. We haven't had an actual cardiac arrest yet. We've had a couple of people pass out. We've had one or two strokes. We've had several people, fall in the parking lot and actually get injured in the parking lot. So when you guys think of an overall safety aspect, I mean, the far, far majority of what you're going to encounter is medical related cases. Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, our team does that. So I'm a physician. We have a lot of physicians and other folks here. Most of our stuff, we've had a person have cardiac arrest in a festival. We have people pass out, kids playing that get hurt, and things like, we'll talk. And things happen. Things happen. And so we try to help take care of it. We have emergency kits, we have defibrillators, we kind of have we just need more people to join.
I got my front teeth this time.
Again, thank you for coming.
Small world.
We've all been saying thank you, but thank you for coming. I do have a question. So of course you see the people that are here attending, which is great, but our community is massive.
Right.
And I'd like to know what you mentioned. The best way is to run and avoid and hide, run away, right? That's the best thing. So when we're trying to get a massive crowd out, what's the best way? Save ourselves, save the crowd. What comes first? And how do you, in your training, what is the best way of saving a mass? Like a massive number of people? Is it better for do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I mean, part of that comes down to personal choices. What are you going to do? Are you going to put yourself out before others? Are you going to help others before you help yourself? I can't tell you what. That's a personal decision you got to make for yourself. As far as getting a mass crowd out, is to have that plan and practice. Have a plan about, okay, if I'm in this part of the building and something happens here, these are our evacuation routes, and this is how we're going to go, and practice that plan. The more you do that, the more you will save as a mass. There's no magic formula to get 25% this way, 33 this way, and 17 that way. My wife's a math teacher. I'm not a math teacher, so I don't know how many we just saved. But it's to have the plan, think about the plan, and practice it. And your plan doesn't have to be static. That's the thing. You can't think of an active shooter or a crisis response plan as being static, because your shooter's not going to be static. When I mean static, it's not going to be the same thing every time. It's going to change because he could come in from this door, he could come in from that door. And so just for whatever facility you're in or whatever room, because this building is massive, and once y'all get it built out, it's going to be ridiculously massive. So just think, if it's here, can I go out there? And another thing, I don't know if you guys, we can get into this with the security assessment, is to have a PA system or a security booth that monitors stuff. I know a lot of the hospitals we go to, they use different codes, like code white, code black. Or if they don't want to use codes because they don't want to tip people off the codes, it's like they page Dr. White, Dr. Black, Dr. Green. Could get a little tricky if you actually have one of those doctors there. But so I've put both in facilities. So it's, but to have the plan and do that, because if you could say like code black in the prayer room, and then everybody like, oh, it's there, so we need to get as far away from there as possible, and you can respond. But yeah, so it's stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, and like if when y'all sit down and start thinking about the actual plan, if you want us to come look at it, help with you and talk you through it, we're more than willing, because I mean, we don't want anybody to get hurt, and we're here to help everybody.
Well, regarding that, like she said, to protect a mass of people, do you all, like, do you have practices that you go to, like certain worship places that you have, like people practice different scenarios to avoid, a mass shooting?
Yeah, I mean, we could put together scenarios. It's a lot of people when they say that, they want us to come in with like sim rounds, like they shoot like paint or that. I don't want to do that.
Right.
And then, I mean, we could come up with. I mean, you could do tabletop stuff where you could sit down with a map at the facility and be like, okay, somebody comes in here, what do you do? I mean, if you wanted to have small groups, I guess you could do like some scenario where people would come in or like bang bang or like, okay, this is the bad guy coming in the red shirt, what do you do? A lot of that also is kind of tricky because you have to put the facility on exercise mode basically where everybody knows that you're doing exercise. And because the last thing you want to do is be doing an active shooter exercise and have Shelby County and MPD showing out here ready to kill us all. So that's tricky. But it's better to get that plan and then like to do like a tabletop where everybody just sits around a table and says, okay, if this happens here. There's one facility in town now that wants me to put their entire staff through like a high stress type thing. Mm-hmm. I just can't do it. That's not good.
What about those double doors you see when you enter some like hotels? Like what are them in schools? Like you enter through a door and then you get another door.
Right.
Is that better or worse?
It's better. The more barriers you can put between people, the better it'll be. But I will tell you, those doors and those barriers are only as good as the people that are monitoring to let them in. I don't know if you guys remember the Dallas synagogue shooting where the guy got in and was shooting it up and took the rabbi hostage. They have embassy-rated blast doors on the outside of that synagogue. So you could pull up with a truckload of explosives, blow it up, and that door is still going to be there. Well, that person there's actual video of the guy coming up to the door, ringing the doorbell. They just unlock it. Nobody says, hey, how are you doing? What are you here for? They just unlock it and let him in. So that probably $35,000 door is worthless because somebody just hit the button and didn't even, because a lot of people, like for schools and mosques and churches, they don't want to be that confrontational. But there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, how are you doing? What can I help you with? It's just all about how you do it to try to make yourself safe.
Well, again, thank you so much, Brad, Daryl, and the rest of the team from Homeland Security. I hope it was beneficial, and we can have, Brad said, we can have more classes if we needed to. But again, the main thing is to come up with a plan. And now we will work with these law enforcement to come up with a plan, and hopefully we'll do some drills. I'm also working with the Shelby County Sheriff's Office right now. They are planning to do a mock-up drill, and they said it takes 2 months to prepare that, they were telling me. So I'm working with them, so hopefully we will do that. But I know we are very vulnerable, there's no questions about it. So inshallah, we're working, and we will need to come up with some good plan, and in working with the law enforcement and all that, inshallah, we will. And if there's no other question, nothing, so we can wrap it up, and we're probably going to go with the rest of the team to go look around the building, to look on the facility, so they can suggest us what to do, what not to do. Other than that, so we are basically done. So, a long time? Okay. All right, so so we'll have a asr prayer, and after that we can go look around. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much again. Again, thank you.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله